Do you believe that evil can lurk in the most common places, like the house next door? Imagine sleeping peacefully in your own bed, surrounded by your family. No strange noise, no sign of danger, only the silence of the dawn before it all disappears. This is the story of a house where no one screamed, no one ran, no one woke up. A house where an entire family was murdered while they slept. No signs of break-in, no neighbors hearing anything, no cameras working, no clues. 4 bodies, 4 lives ripped out in perfect synchrony, as if time had stopped for a few minutes, only there, in that house. But the most disturbing thing is not the crime. That's what came after. The investigation, inconclusive. The theories, too absurd even for the most believers. The location, abandoned, sealed by the police, and then silently forgotten, silenced, as if someone or something didn't want this story to be told. But today, you'll hear it. Today, we will enter the house where time froze, where logic failed, where death arrived without making a sound, and took it all away. If you think you've seen strange cases before, get ready, because this is not just another crime. It's not just another family tragedy. It's a mystery that defies reality. And maybe the only possible answer is the most frightening of all. Keep watching, because what you're going to hear now, perhaps it should never have been revealed. It was an ordinary night. The Wexler family lived on a quiet street in an American suburb like so many others. Houses with white picket fences, manicured lawns, children riding bikes during the day, and lights going out one by one when night falls. The kind of place where doors are still left unlocked, or were. They had dined together that Friday. The table set, the sound of the television in the background, laughter between parents and children. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. It was the perfect portrait of an American family. Father, mother, 2 young children. Quiet routine, friends in the neighborhood, no debts, no history of violence, nothing, not even a traffic ticket. But that morning, the impossible happened. At 2:47 a.m., a neighbor reported feeling a chill. Nothing that caught the attention of the police, just a nuisance. No noise, no screaming, no sign that 4 people were being murdered a few meters away. At 7:13 a.m., the next morning, the children's grandmother, who used to stop by early Saturdays to prepare pancakes, found the main door slightly ajar. She was surprised. The Wexlers were careful, methodical, discreet. She called. Once, 2, 3. No response. What she found inside that house, according to police records, did not look human. Not because of violence, but because of the absence of it. All were dead, in their beds, lying on their sides, as if they were still sleeping. No sign of a struggle, no scratches, not a drop of blood visible on the ground. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, nothing moved. The autopsy would reveal that all members of the Wexler family died within 4 minutes. No pain, no fight, without any detectable substance in the body, as though sleep had simply been turned off, one by one. The temperature of the room was strangely low, 14 degrees Celsius. The air conditioning in the house was not on. Electricity. It had oscillated for 17 seconds at 2:45 a.m., according to records from the electric company. The security camera at the entrance had stopped working at the exact same moment. No backup, no movement captured. The investigators were stunned. How can someone enter a house, kill 4 people without leaving a mark, without using weapons, without changing the scenery, and leave without being seen? But perhaps the most distressing question is, was it really someone? The case quickly made headlines. Perfect family found dead at home with no signs of invasion, the newspapers said. Criminology experts, forensic experts, and even retired FBI agents were called informally to try to understand what had happened. None of them could come up with a plausible hypothesis. One of the experts in an unofficial interview reportedly said, "If it wasn't a real case, I'd swear it was fiction. It seems that death has entered the house and chose to turn off life as if it were a switch, without leaving a trace." As the weeks passed, the case cooled. No suspects, no new clues, no explanation. Neighbors began to move in. Brokers refused to show the house to potential buyers. And the city decided to forget. But there was more. Behind the scenes, rumors began to circulate. Small details that were never included in the official reports, but that were included in the private notes of police officers and paramedics who attended the case. One of the rescuers would have felt an absurd weight when crossing the door of the house, as if the air was thicker. A police officer described confused voices, like people crying in another room, even with all The house empty. The children's grandmother herself, in shock, would have murmured, "They are still sleeping. They are trapped inside." And the most disturbing? When the bodies were removed and the forensic examination completed, the house was sealed. But less than 72 hours later, the kitchen lights turned on by themselves. Neighbors called the police. No one was found inside, but the lights were on, and a chair was pulled off the table. Since then, the house has never been inhabited. Again, nobody wants to come in. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to remember. And the Wexler case has become a dead file, buried under piles of unsolved mysteries, and theories ranging from the absurd to the supernatural. But what if the most absurd? Is it precisely what comes closest to the truth? But it is from here that the case takes an even stranger turn. When county officers officially entered the scene, protocol called for complete isolation of the area. The house was sealed with forensic tape. The surrounding streets were blocked and every inch of the place was photographed, recorded, documented. Everything seemed normal, and that was precisely the problem, because nothing there matched the scene of a crime. The front door showed no signs of break-in. The locks were intact. The windows were all closed from the inside. The locks, locked with a key. Not even the house alarms had been activated, as though nothing had really happened, and yet 4 bodies were there, arranged with mathematical precision, as if they had been carefully placed back in their beds after death. The covers aligned, the heads resting on the pillows. Even the cell phones were next to them, charging, as if everyone was getting ready for another day. The problem was that the next day never came. The absence of footprints inside the house was the first element that challenged the logic of the investigation. The rugs, carpets, and even the tiled floor in the kitchen were completely clean. There were no entry or exit marks, nor fingerprints other than those of the family itself. Not even the most cautious of assassins could erase his presence so perfectly. Investigators then resorted to the house's camera system, 3 external, 2 internal. The external ones, according to the security company's technician, stopped transmitting at 2:45 a.m., exactly 2 minutes before the estimated time of death. The internal cameras, however, were on, but did not record anything. The recording history, it was simply gone. Apparently, the files from the last 12 hours had been corrupted, but when investigating the company's backup servers, something even more disturbing was discovered. At that same time, 3 other customers on the same street also reported temporary failures in their systems. Coincidence? Or did someone or something know exactly what they were doing? In the forensic report, there are 3 words that bother any expert in crime scenes. Without logical explanation. There were no toxins in the blood. There were no signs of poisoning. The gas system in the house was in perfect condition. The heartbeat ceased in sync, as if an invisible button had been pressed, shutting down the entire family's life at once. A forensic cardiologist even suggested a simultaneous arrest due to sudden induced bradycardia, something extremely rare, almost impossible, and yet it was the most scientific explanation they could offer. And then came the neighbors. A couple next door reported hearing a strange noise around 2:40 a.m., like a low-pitched electric hum, like when the TV goes off the air. They thought it was something related to the power grid, but the sound suddenly stopped and didn't come back. Another resident of the street, a 79-year-old woman, said she saw a still shadow in front of the window of the children's room shortly before 3 in the morning. When questioned, she stated that she thought it was the father of the children, looking out. But when he showed exactly where the figure was, she pointed out the window, outside, on a 2nd floor. No balcony. This account was noted, but soon considered unlikely. Many believed that the elderly woman was confused. But what about the night delivery man who, at 3:15 a.m., as he passed the main street, noticed an irregularly pulsing red light inside the house, something he thought was an emergency alarm? He mentioned this on his delivery app as a voice observation, a recording that was later recovered by local journalists. The background sound? It is indescribable. A kind of whisper in several voices, superimposed, incomprehensible, that last less than 10 seconds. The audio was analyzed and discarded as ambient interference. Behind the scenes, however, investigators were beginning to clash. One of the oldest detectives abandoned the case, citing differences with official protocol. Another asked for psychological leave. Several reports have disappeared. Some images of the crime scene, which had been printed, disappeared from the central archive of the police station. One lieutenant even stated that the case was being sabotaged by forces beyond the reach of the police. And then came the most inexplicable detail. In the parents' room, there was a single mark that did not belong to the family, a partial fingerprint, left on the inside of the lamp next to the bed. The FBI database did not identify any correspondence. The strangest thing? The fingerprint had 7 grooves instead of the usual 8. An incomplete pattern, human, but with something wrong. The biometrics expert classified it as an extreme genetic anomaly, but this report was never delivered to the press. It was leaked months later through an outsourced employee who preferred not to be identified. In the days that followed, the house was guarded 24 hours a day by police and external mobile cameras. Nothing was recorded, no movement, no invasion attempt. But the feeling, according to the reports of 2 night watchmen, was of being watched constantly. One of them swore to see flashing lights in the children's room at 4 a.m. on 2 different occasions. He resigned 3 days later. The other, a former military man, started to use a body camera on the rounds, and in one of the recordings, a metallic and repetitive sound can be clearly heard coming from inside the house. The recording also disappeared from the official system. Over time, the media reports changed their tone, from real terror to skepticism, from mysterious crime to psychological speculation. Some even said that the family had committed a collective suicide, but none of the psychological, medical, or behavioral profiles supported this thesis. No history of disorders, no farewell letter, no substance found, only death, cold, silent, inexplicable. And this is where the case begins to fold in on itself, because the more you investigated, it made less sense. Logic failed. Science did not answer. Technology has been sabotaged. And fear began to take hold of those who dared to dig deeper. Perhaps that is why the case was filed so quickly. Perhaps that is why the house has been placed under secrecy. And maybe that's why residents of the area don't like to talk about what happened that night. But the story doesn't end there. What came next, the theories, the events that continued to happen even after the house was empty, are even more disturbing. Because sometimes what you don't see is what haunts you the most. And what seems impossible, it's just the beginning. What if all this was just the beginning? When investigators finally backed down and the house was officially abandoned, theories began to emerge. Many of them so absurd that they would be discarded in any other context. But in this case, the more absurd the theory, the more it seemed to fit, because the facts did not answer the basic questions. And when logic fails, fear fills the void. The first theory that circulated strongly came from the internet, from forums that usually feed on real mysteries, unsolved crimes, and government conspiracies. An anonymous user claimed to have seen signs of brainwave manipulation in the electrical data of the Wexler house. He was referring to a possible intentional electromagnetic interference, capable of causing paralysis, heart disorders, and even sudden death. According to this same user, the house would have been the target of a top-secret experiment conducted by an unknown agency, and the victims would have been chosen at random. Crazy theory? Yes. But what if it were true? Experts ruled out the possibility, but they could not explain the synchronized electrical blackout, the interference in the cameras, or the absence of chemical substances in the victims' bodies. No gas, no drugs, no poison. What if a high-frequency signal was really responsible? And if it hadn't been a traditional crime, but rather a test, control? Another theory gained traction after an independent investigation by a group of former military and anomaly researchers. According to them, there were indications that the house was being monitored before the crime. A drone, accidentally captured by a neighbor while filming the backyard, passed over the roof of the Wexler house about 48 hours before the tragedy. The drone had no identification, and the original video mysteriously disappeared from the cloud. Coincidence? Or was someone really watching, waiting? But nothing compared to the hypothesis that caused the most commotion, the connection with a sect. The Dark Veil Forum, known for exposing dark cases and dark rituals, has published a series of unconfirmed documents that would link the Wexler house to a secret group called the Voices of the Fourth Watch, a cult that, according to reports, performs rituals during the early hours of the night, especially at 2:45 a.m., the exact time of the family's death. They believe that this is the moment when the veil between the worlds would be at its weakest. According to these beliefs, at that very minute, it would be possible to access the frequency on the other side, and in some cases bring something from there to here. Do you still think this is all just theory? One of the images leaked on this same forum showed a symbol engraved in charcoal at the base of the stairs of the house, something that was not in the official files. It was a circle with 4 inverted crosses and a spiral in the center. The caption read, "Call Mark. Only the chosen ones listen." The police denied the existence of the symbol, but those who saw the image swear that it was real, and that soon after disappeared from all platforms. And then came the supernatural reports. People who entered the house, out of curiosity, defiance, or madness, began to report bizarre experiences. A woman who broke into the place with 2 friends to record a video ran away after hearing childish laughter in the room where the children had been found. She fainted when she reached the street. Friends said she was in a trance and repeated the words, "They're still here, they're still here." A man, an employee of the cleaning company hired to remove the furniture from the house, abandoned work in the middle of the first hour. He refused to say what he saw. He resigned, moved to another city, and never spoke about it again. And then a new piece of data emerged, something that the mainstream media ignored, but that local archives confirmed. The Wexler house was not the first unexplained crime scene on that grounds. In 1971, a family named Crawley was also found dead, asleep. 4 people, same number, same room, same estimated time of death. The house at the time was demolished and the case closed as a domestic accident. A new structure was built on the site in 1994, the very house where the Wexlers would die nearly 30 years later. And you know what's even more disturbing? Between 1971 and 2021, 2 other families lived there. The first moved after 3 months. The second disappeared. That's right. Police reported all members of the Hayward family, who lived there, missing in 2003. The house was found locked. No signs of a struggle, none of the belongings were taken. Only empty. 3 occurrences, 3 different decades, 3 families, and a pattern that no one wants to admit. Gradually, the house earned the nickname Sleep House among unofficial investigators. Others called it the House of Silence, and a small urban cult began to form online. People obsessed with the case, who tried to spend a night there and document their experiences. Many claimed to hear metallic sounds, muffled cries, and even feel the presence of someone watching. One of them live-streamed for about 3 hours, before transmission drops abruptly. The video was never recovered. The last frame showed the bedroom door opening by itself. No noise, no explanation. And then, the final theory, and perhaps the most terrifying of all, gained traction. The house was alive, or possessed, an entity, a field, a kind of sleeping consciousness, something that awakens cyclically and chooses, like a predator that hibernates among its victims, a cycle that can repeat itself at any time, and maybe is about to start over. This kind of idea, as insane as it sounds, is not new in the world of real horror. There are documented records of places that cause physical, psychological, and even deadly effects on those who inhabit them. Haunted houses, cursed lands, places where science is silent, and the supernatural whispers. The question is, do you believe it? Do you believe that there is a place where logic does not enter? Where does death not need weapons? Where time fails? And does fear become part of the structure? Have you ever been to a place like this? If so, write in the comments, "I already felt like I wasn't alone," or just say, "They're still here." Let's see how many people will recognize this feeling. And if you still think that all this is a coincidence, that these cases are just misinterpreted reports, that there is nothing but rational explanation. So, stay with me, because in the next segment, the story goes even deeper, because not everything has been told yet, and the most shocking is yet to come. At this point, you may be trying to rationalize everything you've heard so far. Perhaps he is trying to find answers in the midst of the chaos, an explanation that gives back to the world the sense of normalcy that this case seems to have forcibly torn away. But what if there is no explanation? What if, in fact, this story is just a cruel reminder that not everything can, pies, or should be understood? The house is still there, closed, silent, forgotten, or at least, that's how they want it to look. Officially, the Wexler family's case remains filed as death by undetermined cause. No suspects, no arrests. No concrete clue that even allows us to formulate a hypothesis accepted by science or the law. The house, with all its furnishings intact, was declared tainted property by the county. Not because of biological risk, but because of a negative psychological impression of high impact. A bureaucratic expression to say that. No one wants to set foot in there anymore. And yet every year people show up. Curious, researchers, skeptical, obsessive about unsolved crimes and paranormal mysteries. People like you, people like me, who can't turn his face when a story like this challenges what we know about reality. But let me ask you a simple, direct, and perhaps uncomfortable question. Would you sleep there for one night? No cell phone, no cameras, without company, just you and the house. The same room where the bodies were found, the same walls, the same bed. You'd lie down, close your eyes, and would you trust that this time nothing will happen? Because some people tried. 3 volunteers from an independent paranormal project spent a night at the house in 2022. The goal was to test for unusual activity levels. They used temperature sensors, infrared cameras, and sound frequency capture equipment. Nothing was captured until exactly 2:45 a.m. At that moment, the 3 measuring devices crashed. The lights in the house went out for 17 seconds, and one of the sensors picked up an unusual reading, a sudden change in atmospheric pressure, accompanied by a high-pitched sound inaudible to human ears but recorded by the directional microphone. 2 of the volunteers gave up on the project and refused to talk about what happened to this day. The 3rd reported episodes of sleep paralysis and auditory hallucinations in the following days. An official psychological investigation did not detect any pre-existing disorders. Coincidence? Or continuity? You see, in common cases, we look for causes. We are looking for people. We look for culprits. But in this case, everything points to something that doesn't move like a killer, that doesn't act like a human, something that does not need to invade nor run away, because it's there. It always has been. Some scholars call this energy waste. Others call it presence. There are those who believe in interdimensional entities that settle in specific places, and then there are those who defend the idea that certain terrains function as portals, points where reality folds, and what we call the impossible trickles through the cracks. The question is, whatever happened in that house, it is not in the past. The energy of the place seems alive, as if the air still carried the last breath of that family, as if the walls had memorized the last thoughts. It is as if the structure itself was always waiting for new victims. This is the part that scares the most, because if this place is really conscious in some way, if this house chooses, wakes up, feeds itself, so no one is safe, no logic protects us, no belief supports us, just chance, the moment, the wrong choice of address. Maybe the house isn't haunted. Maybe the house is the haunting. And when you understand that, you realize that the mystery is not only in the facts, it's in what you feel when you hear this story. That shiver, that pressure in the chest, that impulse to look back, just in case. Because the mind recognizes when it is dealing with something out of the ordinary, and she tries to warn him. Do you feel that now? Do you feel writes in the comments? I wouldn't sleep there even for $1 million. Or, if you are more courageous, I would spend the night in that house. Let's see how many people have the courage to say it out loud. Now, before you leave here thinking that this is all just a dark story, a well-produced video, or a well-written script, remember one thing: this story is real. These people existed. That house is still standing. And maybe you never sleep peacefully again. If you've made it this far, it means you're just like us. Someone who wants to go all the way. Someone who doesn't run away when things get dark. So take advantage and subscribe to the channel now, because in the next video, the mystery goes even deeper. The next case is grim, darker than anything you've seen so far. And if you think this was the height of horror, wait until you hear what's next. Tap on the video that is appearing on the screen now. Clicks. Don't waste time. And if this video gave you goosebumps, leave the like. It's the least, right? But if fear has caught your hand, I understand. I just hope that when I go to sleep today, you lock the bedroom door tightly and don't hear anything coming from the hallway. Good luck.